Okay, I'm gonna try to teach the basics first because it's gonna be important, but I'll try to do it fast to save as much time as possible. So it seems that you're a beginner, so I'll try to teach the important basics first. And I'll try to increase the size of my screen so that you can read easily, even if you're not in full screen. So first of all, middle click on the mouse, you can move around in GameMaker, and you can grab this, slide this here, and I'll try to tell those as I think about them, but I'll try to teach really programming first. So okay, quickly, what's a comment? If you put two bars like that, anything that you write is ignored by the program. So it's basically as if it didn't exist. What I like to do is if you have something that's complex, you can explain here what it is. So if it's movement, you could say depending on the angle of the enemy, try to run away. So just a simple explanation to know what the code does. So that's a comment. What's a variable? It's anything that you can assign a value to. In other words, it's kind of like algebra, more or less. Uh, let's say you need to know the strength of something, and you want the monster to have a strength of 10, whatever that means. In the create event, you put that there, and then if later you need to compare the strength of one object with another, you could. Would that be useful? Maybe. Depends on the game, depends on what you want to do. So, and you can change it. I'll tell more about variables later, but this is going to be obvious, I think. What's a function? Well, there are some functions in GameMaker, but usually you're going to be using a script, and I'm gonna give you an example. But in short, a function is something that uh, it either does something or it calculates something and gives you the result. So maybe you want to know if, let's say you want to know if 10 is bigger than 5. You could use a function for it. Actually, you could just do if 10 so okay, you could do it this way, but you can't do a whole function, a complex calculation in one line. So when you have something complex, you make a script or a function. So instead of this, you could do is n bigger than n being a number and the other n being another number. Uh, so okay, right click here, create script, and then you can call the script whatever you want. I called it is n bigger than n because it explains very clearly what it does. And the is, that's a naming thing. By having is, it tells me if it's gonna be what type of script it's doing. Okay, you don't have to remember this, but it's good practice to do it this way. So you know it's either gonna be true or false. Is it bigger than this? So if you want to know true or false, it's a good idea to do that. I might be sharing too much information for now because you're just beginning, but if you forget 90% of what I'm saying here, it doesn't matter. You can check back later, and when I'm going to be showing you other things, you'll understand why. You'll understand the mentality behind some things, but don't lose sleep over this if you're not sure what I'm talking about right now. But I give an example of a function anyway. So uh, if you want, I explain what this is, how this does. is if you're here, in GameMaker below is going to show what it says. So it says N1, N2. It will be strength and health, depending on what you wanted to do with this. So it's just to help you remember what variable should be where. So anyway, 10, uh, sorry, 10, 5, let's say. Well, in the script, you could do this, which means the script takes the two numbers, it does what you want it to do, and then it gives back the value. It returns it. In other words, I know this isn't related to the movement yet, but it's going to help you understand why the code works. So that's why I'm teaching you all the basics first. So this will be equivalent to this. Those will be the same because this is read first, this is calculated first, and then the answer or the return value takes its place. So now it becomes this. If true, do whatever. So that's a function. Great. So now I've shown the basics your way. Let's get to the movement. Uh, one sec. Okay, I'll start with very simple movement because even oftentimes a simple thing is going to be enough for you to make something good with it. So I'll show the simplest thing first. I'll make, you'll understand a little why I'm doing this. Actually, yeah. Okay, that's going to be for later. So for the movement, usually you'd have a variable for the speed of the player. You can't use built-in variables like this. Well, you can, but I recommend you don't because it won't be clear what they do and you won't exactly understand what they're doing. So you can do player speed or speed. Personally, I do max speed and I'll put it to 4. I also change the room stuff. Whoops, wrong thing. Just so that it doesn't become in full screen. And I don't know if Studio is gonna record this. I'm not sure, but it should work. So go on object, select the sprite. Now we're gonna add event. I'm gonna add a step event. Movement. Okay, so we talked about functions earlier. One that we're gonna need is keyboard check. What this does is you pass in some key. So let's call it right key, for example. For now, this doesn't mean anything, okay? But it will later. So if right key x plus equal, I think I called it max speed. I chose max speed because later we'll add acceleration, so the player will start moving slowly and slowly accelerating towards the maximum speed that you want it to move at, basically. That makes for smoother movement. But for now, you instantly go to the max speed. And again, I might be sorry if it's not as clear as it could be. I'm trying to teach quickly because videos usually last a long time. So we're gonna set the right keys for the movement, for the input. So the right key, if you're using WASD, you're gonna need to do this. So that will be the right key. Ord with quotes like this and a letter in caps, in capital letters, basically takes the key for the corresponding letter on your keyboard. So left key, oops, forgot. Bonjour, ça va bien? Oui. Ben ça, je travaille pour Ben, on faisait le tour au niveau de la fibre optique, des nouvelles promotions de nouveaux clients. Oh, okay, there was someone at the door, so I had to pause the video. So, okay, so what this does, well, first of all, we would usually put this in the create event. You won't get problems if you put it here. So for the tutorial, I'll leave it here. But normally, you take this, control, you select it, control X, and you put it here. By the way, control Z reverts changes you make. Excuse the train, there's a train, sorry about that. Again, I'll leave it in the step event just to make things simpler because this is a tutorial. So, okay, so what can you do with this? You can find out, well, okay, uh, I forgot that sometimes, okay, too many things to explain at once. First of all, this here is a tiny bit advanced. Uh, I'll explain what it does. Basically, it's the same as doing x equals x plus max speed. That's what this means. This and this mean the same thing. If you're confused about it, just forget about the first one. It took me a while to grasp this properly. It always confused me and I always mixed up between the equal and the plus. So basically we're saying x now equals to, okay, so I had another little interruption. What's happening is I'm at my mom's office, so sometimes people come in here and go, so that's what's happening. Anyway, back to the code. Yeah, okay, so this could be considered as a parenthesis like that. X plus max speed. X is whatever the position of the player is. It could be 0, it could be 10, doesn't matter. What matters is going to change by this value, which is 4. So the player is going to move forward 4 pixels. That's what it means. So I think you already knew that. Again, I'm just being thorough because I don't know what you know and what you don't know, and also other people who are going to watch the video. So I'm going to write it this way for now, simply because it's simpler for people. So, okay, so normally copy pasting isn't so good, but I'm going to do it right here because it's such little code, and also maybe with some luck I'll mess up and you'll see why we shouldn't copy and paste. Okay, so now the left key. There's two ways you can handle that. You can replace plus with a minus. If you're pressing left, subtract that speed, or you can put a negative in front of the value. So it's going to be negative of this value, simply. It's up to you. It doesn't make a difference here. Then you need to do the same thing for up and down. So this is going to be the down key, because unlike a normal Cartesian map, the lower you go, the higher the y value. So the y-axis is inverted. 0, 0 is at the top left corner of the screen, and whatever your screen resolution is, so in my case 1920 and 1080p, that will be here, the bottom right corner. So that's for the downward key. So this should give a fairly basic movement code. We're going to test it out, and I might have to check if it gets recorded or not. I'm not sure. Uh, it's not getting recorded. Yes, it is getting recorded. Good. Okay, so I forgot to put the player object in the room. So I need to stop this and go place the player somewhere. And now it should work. Again, I'm not 100% sure that this is recording, but while recording the game window. So with WASD, this is what happens. So it's working, and if I press up and down at the same time, it's not moving. I press left and right, and by that I mean A and D, but you could have chosen other keys. So it's moving as intended. As a little note, I made the game, I forgot where to set this up. Well, never mind, it's not that important for now. So back to the player object. This works, and it works well enough, but if you move diagonally, you're gonna move faster. It's not necessarily a problem. Maybe you should just go ahead with this, make your first game like that, and not worry about it. Because for a lot of games, it doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal that you move more. The exception is if you want to be able to run around an enemy. If you move faster diagonally, you won't be able to, because the enemy will just follow you, and yeah, you won't be able to go around the enemy. You won't be able to circle the enemy. So that's why it might be important for you to have proper movement. So if you want to have proper movement, there's a way. So we're going to replace our code. Instead of immediately changing the position of the player, we're going to calculate the input. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So technically, let's pretend the speed is 1. Basically, the input here is 1. If you're pressing right, for the x-axis, add 1. If you're pressing right, for the x-axis, add 1. That's basically the input. It's 1. Now if you're pressing left, it's as if the input was -1, right? Because you're basically saying go left. If you press both at the same time, you're basically saying, don't move, stay right where you are. 1 plus minus 1 equals 0, don't move. So what does that mean? That means we can create a local variable, which I will call x input, because that's what it is. Okay, so the keyword here means that it's temporary, and at the end of the whole thing, which is in this case an event, or if it were a script, it will be at the very end of the script, the local variable will be deleted, it will be forgotten, so it's temporary. So okay, x input equals 0. Then what do? You do x input equals 1, or no, x input equals x input plus 1. Okay, and then for the left side, minus 1. If you press right and left at the same time, x input will be equal to 0, which means don't move left, don't move right. Now we can do the same with the y input. So we'll add another variable, y input equals 0, and we'll do the same thing here. So basically the same thing. So that's the x-axis, and by the way, a good thing to do usually is to keep things separate. So this is for the x input, or movement on the x-axis, and then this will be movement on the y-axis. I wouldn't comment it personally because y input, it's pretty obvious what it is, but maybe it will help you remember what it is doing. Then afterwards, what do? You do x equals x plus x input times max speed. So first of all, little mathematics reminder. Exponents come first. I don't know how to write exponents, so I just won't. No, sorry, parentheses come first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then subtraction and addition. And that matters because what this means is this happens first. This is the same as without parentheses, so that's just a little reminder in case you didn't know. So yeah, and that's equivalent to what we had earlier. It's going to work just the same. Then you can do the same for the y-axis. So in case you didn't understand what this is doing, max speed is for it's how much it should move basically when you're trying to move. X input and Y input is basically the direction. Are you supposed to move left? Are you supposed to move right? Are you supposed to stand still? So it can be -1, 0, or 1. Multiplied by the speed value, that's what makes it go either to the right or to the left or not move at all. Again, it's the same as what we had before, basically. It's equivalent, it's going to have the same result. And I can show you that, just so that you can see. But yeah, it's equivalent, it's the same. If I press both, that's what happens. And for diagonals, it still works the same way. I'll show you some way to fix the diagonals. So that's for the basic movement. I'm not sure how long the video has been going on. 11 minutes. I'll continue. I'll show you a better way to do movements. I'll zoom out just a bit because I'm having a hard time to see. So we'll keep the input because the input works well. So I won't change that. What I'm going to change is the diagonals, basically, make it work properly. So instead of incrementing x and y by maximum speed, we have a function that can be used for to calculate this. So we don't need to do complex mathematics. So x equals x plus length dir length dir. As you can see at the bottom here, it says what the variables mean. Length means length, so how far we're trying to go, and we're trying to go at maximum speed. And then the direction we're trying to go, we're gonna need this. I'll show you how to get that afterwards. Okay, but for now, just know that with the direction and the speed or the amount you want to move, you can get the proper. In other words, if you go in the diagonal, you're supposed to move a certain amount to the right, a certain amount up, and this tells you what's the amount. So that in total, it's as if you moved the right distance, right? Because otherwise, if you move one right, one up at the same time, you're moving further away than if you just move right or left. I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but this makes the movement work accurately. So do the same thing for y, and don't forget, that's the problem with copying code, you can forget things. So here, don't forget to replace x by y. Okay, so now we need to know the direction, right? Because otherwise it won't know what to calculate. So there's a function for that, which is point direction. And it basically takes two coordinates. So let's say you wanted to know the angle from the player towards an enemy. You could put x, y of the player and enemy.x, enemy.y. And that would give you the angle from the player towards the enemy. But what we're doing instead here, we take 0 and 0 because it's basically the center of if you had a joystick, like a gamepad, a game controller, if you had a joystick, imagine that's what it represents. And the X input and the Y input is basically where the joystick will be placed. So if it's on just to the right, I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but it works. So X input, Y input. Maybe I can make a quick drawing. Let me check if I can do that, because that would make it much easier to explain. Is this recording? Yes, it is. Okay. Uh, okay. If you want to move a distance of 1, here, I'll grab the pen, I think it's going to be easier. Okay, you want to move 1, right? If you just move 1 here, and then 1 up there, you're going to end up here, which is not the right distance. So there's a calculation to be made for if you take a stick, and you rotate it, how much on the x-axis are you moving? And how much on the y-axis are you moving? That's basically what length dir and that's what length dir does basically. So back to programming, this gives you the direction. So with this, your player is going to move properly on the diagonals. So I'll just show you. Oh, so I forgot something. As you saw, the character just went to the right. Uh, you need to check first that there's an input because the default 0000 just points to the right. So if x input doesn't equal 0 or y input doesn't equal 0. And I'll show you another way to put this because that's you might not be used to. Well, okay, I'll just explain it to you. Okay, I think you'll understand. This means or. Okay, so this could be written this way. And this here means not equal. I don't think GameMaker has a not equal word for it, but this means not equal. This means is equal to. Is not equal to, is equal to. So I forgot to mention that in the beginning. And this here means or. So you have two conditions. If one of these two conditions is true, then this will be ran. So if x input is not 0, if or y input is not 0, so basically if the player is trying to move somewhere, if there's some type of input, then you're going to calculate where you should be going and move in that direction. That's what it means. So now it should be working, assuming I haven't made no mistake. I don't think I have. Now as you can see on the diagonal, it doesn't move faster than it does just moving right and left. And by the way, I realized that my player character is very small, so maybe you have a hard time seeing it. But basically, on the diagonal, it doesn't move faster than when just going in a straight line. So that's the purpose of that. Okay, so let's do some optimization to the code we have for the input. Normally, with other game engines, you couldn't do this, but with GameMaker, you can. When GameMaker returns, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. I think I completely forgot to explain how keyboard check works. So it's a function, like we talked about earlier, which returns true or false. And true means 1, and false means 0. You don't have to do this if you want to keep the code that is right here. It works perfectly. You don't need to change it. It's fine. Okay, it's completely fine. But if you want to, you could do this. So, okay. So let's explain what this does. Basically, like I said earlier, it returns either true or false, which in GameMaker is 1 or 0. So if the player is pressing the right key, this is going to be equal to 1, right? So let's do it line by line. Let's say the player presses the right key. Then, let's say the player is not pressing the left key. Okay, so it's only pressing D or the right arrow, depending on which keyboard key you put. So it's not pressing the right key. So this means x input equals 1 minus 0, which means means x input equals 1, which means that when you move to the right. So that's a trick to make it, well, to use less code for the same result. You couldn't do this with other engines. It's because GameMaker doesn't have a true or false values. It has numbers only. So now I need to do the same thing for the y-axis. Like I said earlier, when you copy code, watch out because you can easily screw up. So the down key is positive, as we said earlier, because the y-axis, when you go down, increases in computers and video games, unlike a normal quotation mark. So theoretically, this should work just as well as before. Here's another way to do a comment that I didn't tell earlier. So basically, a bar like this with a star, and then to end the comment, you put another star and a bar. So anyway, this should be the same. We'll test it to make sure, in case I made a mistake, but it should be. So it's working. So now that we know it works just as well, I'll remove everything else. And now we have less code, and the player moves pretty smoothly. I'll stop here for now, because you can already do a lot with this. Uh, I'll show collision checking in the next part, which is going to be right away, by the way, because I'm going to keep explaining this stuff. Yeah, collision will be important, so that's what I'm going to show next.